Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. This is one of the Owyhee Opals that I showed off the other day. Now, I bought a few stones from this seller, but today we're going to fix this one. Mainly because if you look, just watch that light glint as I roll it across the surface. See how it jumps? See how it's just jumping away, and you can see these sharp edges. So the stone itself, it seems to have been cut fairly rushed. I mean, these stone manufacturers, because this didn't come straight from the US, this came from a cutter in India, I think. And a lot of their other stones were beautifully done. But this one in particular, for some reason, maybe because of the quality of it, they weren't overly interested in spending much time on it. You can see here that there's distinct cutting lines that just, it's like they scraped it up against a wheel in this kind of direction, over and over again. It's cut these channels across the entire face of the stone. It's also not been finished all that well in terms of the back, so for some reason this one's all wonky, like they didn't spend any time on the back at all. They just took it off the dop and job done. Maybe they didn't even use a dop, and some of the edges aren't even polished. But you can see here what I mean. There's these weird, like, vertical... Normally, if a stone hasn't been finished that well, I see more of like a circular pattern. But this is just a vertical one where they've just... Yeah, I don't know, maybe just gone up against the wheel like this, or for some reason maybe they do it this way. I'm not sure. But I want to get rid of all of that and make it a nice, even kind of smooth thing instead of feeling all these lumps and ridges all the way across the face. So that's what we're going to do today. And to do that, I'm going to start off using this bad boy, which I don't use that often. This is the 60 grit Nova point. So I'm going to hit it with this and then go through the normal 280 through to 3000, and then maybe even some polishing powder just to give it that nice mirror finish again. So yeah, this is how to fix up a poorly cut or poorly finished stone, and hopefully it'll be much better when we're done. Alright, here we go. 60 grit Nova. Rarely used, but I think I'm starting to grow to think this is going to be the best bit for me when it comes to touching up stones or redoing stones that I've bought in. Because it does happen a bit, this problem, where you get a stone that's just been poorly finished, especially from these factories that pump out thousands a day. But you can see here, we're really focusing on getting rid of all of those weird edges. And a lot of the time, most of this carving I do in this orientation, because this goes across all of those little grooves that they've cut into it and just slowly gets rid of them. And I spent quite a while focusing on that side because it was the one that was so poorly finished, like they'd missed, or they'd just decided not to do it, which I understand after doing this process. That's really weird part of the stone, and I'll explain that later on. But there we go, just keeping an eye on it. This was one of the sharper kind of points that was left on the stone, so really had to get rid of him by really targeting it. And then we even it out by going across in the perpendicular kind of direction. You can already see it's getting much better. The 60 grit did an incredible job at this. I'm glad I didn't start with the 280 and think that was going to do the trick, because it really would have taken me 10 times as long. You can see here I wanted to change the shape of the bottom a little bit. It was a little bit lopsided and I wasn't a huge fan of that, so just wanted to dome it a little bit more as well. It was a bit of a sharp end to the bottom, whereas the top was really nicely curved, so we had to change that up. And you can see me spending a bit of time on the interface lines, so where the two different materials are kind of meeting. I did that because they work unevenly. So it's important to go across in this direction, in this perpendicular direction, just to make sure that they stay fairly even. But you also want to focus on those joining parts. And because it's not a precious opal, we'll just fly through the other grits. The basic gist is that going through all of them, so 280, 600, here's the 1200, 3000 in cerium, and yeah, it's basically exactly the same. We're going across it in this direction to make sure we're getting rid of all of those little bumps along the way. And yeah, just calmly, really slowly, just methodically working through it. You just want to hit all the areas enough to get rid of the previous stage's scratches. And that's what we do. And then I finish it off with a little bit of polish because I liked how it was finished in most areas before, and it's a nice looking stone, so it is worth shining up. So get out the Blacklighter Secret Polish and just finish it off, and then we're all done. Done and dusted. Now it doesn't feel like I'm running my finger across a corrugated iron piece of roofing. It's beautifully even and smooth across the surface. You can see the light strip there, it just goes over the surface instead of like jumping between segments. So all the segmentation is gone. I've polished it right to the edge. It's still wet. I've still got the water right here. I'm just recording straight after. And it was good except for one thing. This is definitely not opal. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's not opal. And it was just so weird to get a polish on and run it through the stages. This stuff over this side, all easy. I mean, that dark blue strip was a little bit harder to get rid of all the scratches in. This was so tough. Some of the scratches, some little pieces over here where they didn't finish it the first time, there were a whole heap of little chips and stuff, and I wanted to work those back, so I did that. But honestly, this section here was so hard to get a good finish on. So I don't blame the people for rushing this one and kind of just basically pre-shaping it and chucking a polish on as much of it as they could in a couple minutes, because that took me a considerable amount of time just to fix it up, just to get rid of all that corrugation on the top, those little grooves that they'd cut into it vertically, just like this. All of those are now gone, which is fantastic news. But yeah, I don't know what this is. Maybe one day I'll take it into the lab and find out if I can be bothered. But it's not opal, and it's a whole different beast. So when you're doing stones like this where there's these multiple layers, as soon as a couple of the layers are inconsistent or behave really differently, like this one, I've never had a layer behave so differently in any kind of opal that I've been cutting. But as soon as that happens, you're in for a rough ride. But you know what? It's good practice. I probably won't have to do that often, and this is probably actually the hardest stone I've ever had to cut just because of that. But it's finished to a point where I'm happy with it again now, so much better than it was, and much more like the other stones they sent over. I don't know what happened to this one. I wish they'd finished it better. Of course, the back I haven't done anything with, so when I decide on if I'm going to set it or not, I'll just basically put it up against a flat lap, because it's a little bit big for the Dremel bits that I've got. So flat lap to just take off that center section there, and we'll just go down until that comes out, which is not very far. And yeah, that's it. That's a nice little piece of Owyhee Opal. All finished up, thank God. If I can give it a little bit of a dry, you'll see. Took a beautiful polish. This part over here could actually do with a little bit more work, but even that's got a fairly nice shine on it now. It just takes, I would say this area here took maybe 4 times longer than this area over here. So that's what happens with the difference in materials. But you know what? It's shiny and no longer lumpy, so I'm happy. Still a beautiful looking stone. Doesn't look any different to what it did at the start, really. It's just much nicer. You really only notice it in the light when you find those little grooves and stuff. But in person, you really do. You feel it. The feeling of it was the worst part. That's what made me decide I had to do it. Now, it feels beautiful. Beautiful and smooth. That's what we like, and this will probably appear later on when I decide to set it. I don't think this one needs a bezel setting. I like the outer edges, so it'll probably be fully exposed in some sort of maybe 6-prong claw or something. I don't know. I don't know enough about the setting game yet, so it'll have to sit around and wait. And in the meantime, I'm going to go work on some other stones, so I'll be back.